Hello and bienvenue. I'm your host, Anaïs, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to Her Career, Her Coach, the podcast dedicated to empowering women to build a career they are truly passionate about. Today's episode has been 3 months in the making, mostly to make sure that today's guest, Ann-Madeleine, had the whole clear from her company to be with us today. And guess what? I am so excited because this is happening. And I really, truly believe that her career journey and story is definitely worth diving into, as it involves many twists and turns, as you'll see. So Ann-Madeleine, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's going to be very exciting. Let's start with starters. Who are you? What do you do? Tell us everything.
So my name is Ann-Madeleine Njike. I'm currently working as a lawyer at Barclays in London. I work in the Structured Products Legalteam, and I basically support various businesses around the world, mainly regarding issuance and distribution of structured products. And just for those who wonder what structured products are, they're investments which provide a return based on the price of an asset. So that's what I currently do. Who I am, I guess I'm a bit of a mix culturally. I'm French, I'm British through my mom, I'm Cameroonian through my dad, and I grew up in France, lived in Cameroon for 3 years, and after my baccalaureate, equivalent of A-levels, I studied in London, in both London and Paris at King's and Panthéon-Sorbonne. Again, a mix of English and French law, which just added, I guess, to the cultural blend in which I was brought up and which I work in to an extent today, as I also work with the French sales desk at Barclays in my role. So practicing my French, keeping it active.
Thank you. What is it that you love the most about what you do? Because you already mentioned so many things in that intro in terms of the cultural blend and the mix and the variation and the different countries you've lived in, you studied in. So, okay, maybe I'm influencing my questions. I'm just going to withdraw my last statement and just say, what is it that you love the most about what you do?
I guess it's a blend of the unexpected, the challenges, being able to work with so many people around the world, supporting very, very different work streams, questions that come in. Any day can bring something completely different. It keeps me on my toes. In that sense, it's very expansive. I do enjoy working with the French team. Of course, it's part of me. It's my, culture I was brought up. We work with colleagues all around the world. And most recently, I was also promoted to people leader role, which is now.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So I'm now managing one amazing person in the team, and that's sort of, taken things to a completely different level, at least because I really enjoy being able to, serve in that sense and help. Yeah, it's a mix of mentoring, obviously managing, supporting, serving, and yeah, it's about connections.
Talking about connections, I feel like this is one of the first thing we discussed when we first met, your interest into the various people that you're working with, the variety of your day as well. And I'd love to know more and come back to the origin, if you'd like. What made you decide to study and work in law in the first place?
Yeah. Oh, wow. It was, I think, yeah, it was language. And again, it had to do with communication. And for me, law is a language. Law is a way that we as humans have found to communicate in a certain way, to create binding contracts, to agree, to, create bridges between various positions, various situations, challenges too. And as a creation, it can sometimes be tricky to navigate, understanding the law, knowing how to think along those lines and getting the right answers. It's a constant challenge, and it's very satisfying.
Love that. All right, so let's have a look at your career journey. What would you say have been your top 3 achievements?
Wow. So I guess going way back, and this is quite unusual for me just because I have a tendency to just look at what's on my plate currently and not to look back at what may have been my achievements rather in the past. But when I first started my studies, I applied not really out of the blue, but really on the base of information that I found in a career magazine about this amazing program that only 40 students per year were admitted to, done
Wow.
in between King's College London and Paris, Panthéon-Sorbonne University, and just the names and the course modules looked incredible to me. And I thought, this is just me. This is amazing. And I'd get to travel, which I love to do. And of course, well, there were certain requirements. And of course, it was a bit daunting because I was expecting not to really be part of those with much hope, to be fair, going again to the point that I grew up in Mulhouse, which for those who know the geography of France is in the east, in Alsace, close to the German and Swiss border. And noting that this was a very prestigious program in partnership with one of the one of the top universities in France, I thought, well, let's just try, let's say. And as it happened, I was taken in, admitted to
Yay!
that. Yeah, it was just incredible. I still remember when I got the news. And so that was it. I was 17 and I came to London for the first time. Although my mum's from the north of England, it was the first time that I was, spending time in London, and I spent 2 years. So this program was, well, breaking down 7 years, the equivalent of a full LLB, which is 3 years, and a master's in France, which was 4 years of law in both jurisdictions, into 4 years. So
Seems
it
big.
was, yeah, it was challenging. It was, yeah, and yeah, made it through.
Yay!
So that was my first, I would say, achievement because it really it impacted my career in ways that, yes, even today I still meet other people who've done that particular double degree program, and it's just so nice to be able to relate to others in this way. Yeah.
I want to come back to the scene you said at the beginning, if that's okay. Like you've mentioned, in terms of your positioning back in the day, like you said, there were more chances for you not to be picked up than to be picked up. Yet you did it. Congrats again. What was your approach back then? As in, were you thinking, I need to wait and see, even though I don't feel I have, most chances, I still hope there is one? Or did you already had a backup plan? Because most of the time we talk about the mindset. And in that particular case, I believe you were sort of protecting yourself, if I'm putting this, into bracket. You can't see me, but I'm using this, les guillemets.
Quote unquote, yeah.
In quote, thank you. But yeah, I want to know more because I'm hearing a lot of people who, just on the basis of thinking there are more chances for them not to be picked up, they don't even go for it. So I'd love to know more. How was your state of mind back then?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. Yeah, I'm passionate about states of mind too. So I guess back then, the worst case scenario was for me to be rejected. And although it would not have been that comfortable, I knew that I needed to try. And I guess to an extent, I may not have thought too much about it. Again, the I would say randomness with which I came across, I still have it in my mind's eye. It was 2 or 3 lines in what we called Guide l'étudiant. It's a student standard,
student guide,
book,
yeah.
where you have basically a breakdown of types of unis, courses that as a student you can perhaps apply for, once you've done your baccalaureate. And I remember those just, double degree, there were a few lines, and I thought, wait, this sounds amazing. And I guess I was taken over more by the amazing,
Yep.
exciting aspects that crowded out the doubt where,
Yes.
oh, well, maybe it's for, I heard then that there was over like 300 or 400 people actually applying and then 40 well, actually 20 in France, 20 in the UK, so 20 people in France were selected to be part of this, group. But it was too exciting not to go for. So
Mm,
that's how it's, yeah.
yeah, no, I like it. So anyone listening to this, if the excitement is more important than, the fear or whatever cons you've got in your head, just go for it. This is your cue. Just go for it. Thank you. Sorry, I've been interrupting. I know you were in a flow, so let's go back to the other achievements.
Ah, no, absolutely. I guess the second achievement for me was one side, so sort of fast forwarding, starting my career, joined Crédit Agricole Corporate and Investment Bank in Paris, and was given an opportunity to come to London again because I finished my studies in Paris, and so I started my professional life in Paris. But then Crédit Agricole in Paris gave me the opportunity of spending 6 months as a contractor back then in the London office with no guarantees whatsoever that anything might come of it. But if I were interested, I could go for it. And I did. They told me, well, if things don't work out, you'll just have to come back to France and we won't be able to keep you. And I said, yes, I'll take the risk. And I remember packing 2 suitcases, getting a single way ticket to London on the Eurostar and looking out of the window thinking, wow, this is so much fun. This is going to be
Yes.
amazing. And I guess around 1 year later, or 1 year and a bit, I was made permanent, which,
Mm.
the beginning of many other things, which, yeah, I'll always remember that. And I'm really grateful for that opportunity.
Of course. So how long ago was that again?
So that was in 2010. So coming up 13 years at the end of this year.
So 13 years ago, you had an opportunity to come to London, and the person who gave you that opportunity said, there might be a chance for you to come back. And you're like, yeah, that's fine. I'll take it anyway. And 13 years down the line, here we are.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow.
Again, the sense of excitement,
Yeah, I can
and
see a theme here
travel.
between the
Yeah.
achievements.
Yeah, it was just too good to miss.
Yeah.
That was also a very important time in my life and achievement, I dare say, because yeah, it could have not worked out, but I wasn't really even thinking about that.
And I feel like the achievement itself, like you've mentioned before, is trusting yourself, and that the excitement part of you was definitely keen to follow through. Again, like we've talked before. So
Yeah,
the achievement on its own is, following whatever instinct or gut feeling or
yeah. That
whatever way
joy,
it came
that
from. Yes,
excitement, the
exactly.
buzz,
Exactly.
unmistakable. Some things
Mm,
can scare us, but there's at certain times I've found myself where, yeah, in this situation where I felt so much excitement about, move that course and and just trusting in those moments, trusting that that was the right thing to do. And I'm so glad
absolutely.
I did.
Yes, exactly. I mean, trusting yourself. You're a true embodiment of that. Absolutely. What would you say has been your third one?
I guess it's ongoing. It's
Mm-hmm.
evolving right now. It's this opportunity to give back as a people leader at Barclays, and the opportunity that was given to me a year and a half into this role, which was it's really incredible. I'm very, very happy about that. A part of me is very, very keen on giving back through mentoring, through sometimes it's just listening out, listening, active listening,
Mm,
finding, again, it's to the point of connecting, understanding other people, communicating, and being in a position now where I can provide support to the best of my
mm,
abilities and guidance again to more junior people. It's an honor, really, and it's very satisfying because you've got the ability to help influence in the most positive way a number of outcomes in
mm,
the day of another person. Of course, there's all sorts of managers slash leaders, and being able to do that in my own way. Again, it's really exciting, and I've got lots to get better with. Of course, it's just early days, but I guess for me, this would be my third achievement.
I love it. You gave us a walk through time. I felt like we jumped in time, obviously 13 years fast forwarding to today. But I'm glad that you're bringing this one up as well to the table. I'm not expecting, as you know, any particular achievement out of those conversations. I love the spontaneity of, having the guests on the show and just, walking through their journey. But you're mentioning a very important point here when it comes to leadership is also accepting the fact that, not everything is perfect just yet. And it might not ever be. It's a journey, but it's a journey that you're taking and you're just putting everything you've got, essentially, all of your experience, all of what we've learned about you so far, and much, much more to help whoever you want to guide, which is great.
Yeah, it's really important. I think there comes maybe a time, depending on, people's personalities, perhaps there comes a time where you do want to impact positively in what you do and the relationships you have with others. Being able to do it in this way in my work it's great.
Yay, I love it. All right, talking about great, let's have a look at it on the other side. Even though they're very much linked, like we've seen before, what would you say have been your top 3 career challenges?
Oh, yes. So I guess
Mm-hmm.
maybe again going back in time, but
Mm.
less so than in our first batch of questions. When I arrived in London and I started working in the legal department, and the head of legal at the time noticed that I had the requisite degrees to become a UK qualified solicitor.
Mm.
And he asked me if I was interested in qualifying, which of course I was, but I had decided when I was still living in Paris that I would not do the French bar. If anything, I felt much closer to the UK English environment as regards law. But I hadn't really taken any further steps to get any qualified. And so he said, okay, well, let's do this. If you are keen, do set it all up yourself. Come to us with anything you need, but if you set it up, get us approved as a training provider, which with Crédit Agricole hadn't been up until then, Crédit Agricole London branch, then you'll be the first one to benefit from your work.
Yeah.
And so again, I said, well, yeah, I'll do it. And so it took some time. It was a lot of checks on procedures, on, what the SRA, which is the regulator for
Mm.
profession, required, making sure that everything internally was set up, and having approvals from, again, the head office in Paris to go ahead with that. And I think it took probably 2 years before I started, but I was the first one. And
Yeah.
part of that legacy was my legacy there was that a number of other people after me were able also to qualify, which was really satisfying. And I was really happy to see that. Yeah. So as a challenge to that point, part of that qualification process meant that I needed to study part-time evening for 2 years
Mm.
for the bar. And so that was really challenging. It's one of those things where if you know that something has to happen and there's no other outcome, and you've willingly agreed to going through this transition work, you create time. I remember waking up at 5:30 in the morning. I was doing quite a bit of fitness back then. I was on my spin bike reading
Oof.
law. And on the weekend, I would spend a good chunk of my weekend studying and prepping for my courses in the week. And it just becomes part of what you do for that
Mm.
time. But yes, it was a challenging time. I'm glad it was,
It's
well,
behind you now.
successful. It's behind me. Yeah. it was about, discipline, and then the habits, and the habits carry you through. And time is going to go by anyway. So I thought, might as well
Make the most of
invest
it.
in myself,
Mm-hmm.
and move forward with that. And then, 2 years after, I was able to start training.
I feel like it's one of those almost fourth achievement, the way you described it. Obviously, you've mentioned,
Yeah,
the not the downside, but also the behind the scenes. Like you said,
yeah,
it involved, early start of the week and also weekend sacrificed. And, I personally resonate with that because obviously I went through it was not as heavy as yours, but I went through my coaching qualification in parallel of my consulting work. And I remember early starts, late finishes, and
yeah,
weekends where you're just like, I'm sorry, I can't go
yeah,
out because I need to
yeah,
study. So I'm glad that you're sharing this one. And at the same time, here's to carving a path because it's not just about you. Obviously, like you said, you made the most of it and you had the opportunity, but you carved the path for, I guess, future people coming to Crédit Agricole who also wanted to go through that process. So kudos to you.
yeah. I'm glad to have been able to witness a few other people going through that process. And well, I'm really happy that they did. I'm happy that now their lives are also, positively impacted by that. And I'm really happy for that
Nice.
opportunity that was given, because it wasn't that straightforward, and we got buy-in from everyone up to the top. It was really, supported, and I was encouraged. Yeah, then I had to do my part for sure, for sure. But it was all well worth it.
Amazing. All right. What's next?
Okay, so I guess here and I've been thinking about this because I haven't really mentioned that much, and especially not publicly. But I went through burnout during the time when remember exactly which confinement it was. There were so many,
Yeah.
but lockdowns, where in my previous role, I blended perhaps my personal life and my work life in working really late hours, perhaps not tending to my own self in the way that I should have, or knowing better. And I ended up burnt out and needing to take time off to recover.
Mm.
And that was a very, very, very challenging period of my life. I decided to talk about it with you today, and for anyone out there who's going through this, or who has gone through, or maybe on the brink of, you know, deepening, unfortunately, this situation, and just because I think it would be helpful. It would be helpful for me to share what perhaps I learned from that. And while it was probably one of the biggest challenges of my more recent years, the gold that came out of that experience, in a sense,
Mm.
was just incredible. And just because it forced me to go deep into myself, where, well, you're pretty much alone. You have to do that. And I guess it's because I wasn't listening to myself previously. I was do all the time,
Mm.
you know,
How long
wanting
ago was
to,
that?
was in 21, early in the year. So yeah,
Yeah,
and
like you mentioned, during this period of like the time gets blurry. So yes.
yeah,
Mm.
and just having to work things through, look at yourself. What did I miss? Why am
Mm.
I now feeling this way? What did I miss along the way? And clearly, in my case, had not been listening to maybe a more balanced voice of, take better care of yourself. Do things that perhaps, you know, check your boundaries, yes, work is important, absolutely. And you need to be able to continue performing to the best of your abilities, and that will not be served by you sacrificing yourself at that level.
Yeah.
It just won't, because then everybody loses. You lose because you feel tired, you feel exhausted, you feel completely lost, and gosh, even worse. And you then your colleagues are also obviously impacted. It was tough because as much as wanting to be super performant, getting everything done, thinking that extending my evening a bit more, to facilitate things the next day, to make everything slightly more fluid, day in, day out, when there are restrictions on going out, when your social life is completely uprooted, it was just condensed bag of, and I remember also myself becoming very negative at that time, which was also very insightful
Mm.
and helped me, reshape. And that goes to, mindsets and how we can, yeah, change or support different ways of looking at life. And I would say, and that's again, that's just my view, but then also experiencing life in a different way, in a way that's more positive, because our thoughts, our beliefs, and therefore the way we're going to be experiencing life is going to be different. And so, yeah, one of the things was to be super grateful and practice that level of care and
Mm.
find opportunities to, yeah, I know it may sound a bit cliche, but finding joy in even the smallest things. I think the main lesson or the main realization that came personally from my time in burnout was you have to be happy. It's the most important thing in your life. You have to be happy. You have to be happy for yourself, and that will trickle through in the relationships, your
Yeah. In
family,
the
your
other areas.
partnership, in
Mm.
everything. And it's not being, super hyped up every single day. No, it's just having this baseline. It's sort of one-on-one happiness where you're open, perhaps excited about what life might bring, and checking the little voices. And I know that was harder for me, but checking that little voice that maybe you're on the negative side of complaining about things. And I'm not saying that everything is always fine and that there's no space for, improving certain things. Absolutely not. But I know that in my case, a negative narrative that had become really embedded in my way of thinking before I was burnt out was something that I needed to take into account to,
Mm.
move through that time.
I can only say thank you. I didn't want it to interrupt because, like you said, it's one of the first time that you're talking about this more publicly. So I can only say that I'm very grateful you shared your journey going through that. And not only, what happened and how you ended up in that situation, but also what you did to overcome it. For anyone listening to this who might have had struggles with burnout before or are in the midst of it, with or without realizing it, how long did it took you to actually, like you said, work on that shift and really making it a mission for you to find joy, to be happy?
Well, I guess it took a couple of months in the depths of, you know, thoughts and processes, and before I was in a position where I could sort of look outside of myself in a sense.
Mm.
And it came on, I would say, and again, this is just my case, and I understand that everyone else's experience will be, I'm sure, very different. But it sort of flowed quite naturally to a state of balance. I was privileged in that I was able to take time off work,
Mm.
which I know a number of people are not. And so, having been given that opportunity, I tended to myself. Sometimes you can't go out and spend time with others. You just don't have that mental space or energy.
Mm.
But one day it sort of starts lifting. And I remember even the support that I got was that this too will pass. You're going to get through it.
Mm.
Different people need different amounts of time.
Yeah.
And I would like to mention that I was able to get through it. So many others get through it. You know, it shall pass. We find our balance, but we need to listen to ourselves and
Yeah.
really take that time to allow whatever needs to come through or to be expressed, even if in silence, even if it's,
Mm.
you can't talk, you don't want to go out with friends, or if you're crying or whatever it may be, or you're staying in bed, that too will pass. We're constantly evolving, we're constantly changing. This is a state that, in my case, was really a wake-up call that the energy and the focus that I was plowing into my daily, including my mental narrative, was unhelpful. I wouldn't say,
Mm.
negative. It was just not helpful given what I wanted to achieve in terms of happiness and levels of joy.
Yeah.
And I had to find that. And so it kind of rebalanced. And I remember the few weeks in that sort of getting better phase were really happy, really joyful.
Mm.
It
Truly
was
appreciating the
incredible.
moment.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely,
Mm.
absolutely. And yeah, so don't know if that was to your question.
It does. It did. And I think an important point that you're mentioning in that is the fact that, like you said, it's a stage. I feel like whatever challenge is heading your way, could be burnout, it could be job dissatisfaction, it could be something even personal. Anyone listening to this, always remember, like you said, that this too shall pass. I think it's a very, very key message. And actually, that links to the final part of the podcast where I need to ask your recommendations. So, obviously, you've shared a lot along the way of unpacking your story. Are there any additional top tips that you'd like to share for anyone listening to us who is looking to make the most out of their career?
I think it's really important to do everything we can to know ourselves better. And as we change over time, what we like, what we dislike, what we think about changes. And taking the time to just notice, you know, how you feel with regards to certain activities or certain thoughts or interactions. Do you feel joy? Do you feel happy? Are you excited? Do you feel a bit off? And just listen and sink into those feelings and perhaps choose again. It's really an invitation. It's what I try to do now each day.
Mm.
And, pivot. If you feel, a bit off about something, well, perhaps it might be helpful to, well, may go without saying, but try to change your mind about that or focus perhaps on something that's more joyful. And I know it's sometimes counterintuitive because it doesn't make the situation that you're feeling negative go away. However, you may be in a better position to look at or engage with whatever you need
Mm.
to engage with from a mindset that's less charged. And I'm not going to use the word negative because that's perhaps not as helpful, but that's as emotionally charged. Yeah. So yeah, knowing ourselves, the eternal,
Mm.
know thyself. And yeah, being kind to
Oh,
ourselves.
fun. Yeah.
That's super important. And I personally have had quite a challenging time doing that
Mm.
within myself, just because I, you know, getting getting things done, getting, even through my studies, etc., and achieving these things was prime. And being kind seemed to me back then as perhaps being weak or being a bit less, on it.
Or even a
But
waste of time. I don't know
yeah,
if this is how you felt, but yeah,
yeah, yeah,
I've
just
experienced that
not,
before.
yeah, waste of time or not useful, it's not rocket fuel, right? But it actually is, because when you can be, at least in my experience, when I was able to then be kind to myself, and yes, sometimes that takes time and you need to do self-care, etc., but it just enhances, not just rocket fuel, it's the entire like setup. You just enhance because you moving in whatever direction it is you're taking in life, in your career, from a space where your relationship with yourself is as good as possible. And of course, there's always going to be, and that's the beauty of life. It's fun. At least for me, it's supposed to be fun, right? But yeah, that kindness to oneself then just shines through to others, and yeah, and just helps us to be our best selves, I guess.
I love it. So many takeaways from hearing your story today. Obviously, like we finished the kindness side of things, finding joy. Do not be afraid to seize opportunities when they come up. Feel the fear and do it anyway. Be there for others. So many takeaways. I have to ask you, as part of the tradition, what would you say is the one word summarizing what we've covered?
Maybe less related, but still encompasses it all, its expansion.
Oh,
Because when you're
this is
able to
good.
expand yourself in so many ways, allow yourself to be, if it's unhappy, hold space for yourself. And from there, you will be able to expand even more in your career, in your relationships. And that's, to me, anyway, that's what life's about. It's about
Mm,
expanding more and experiencing more and, feeling that sense of excitement and yeah, I deeply believe that life's supposed to be an amazing journey. And I only expect the best. The best is yet to come. I'm one of those. Yeah,
I
because
love
we
it.
constantly improve and again we expand. And yeah, it's just exciting to see that, to help others do that, and to do my best to do that for myself.
Well, here's to expanding. Here's to you sharing your story. And again, I'm very, very grateful and thankful that you were here without any filters. You were sharing any particular things that have happened for you, the good, and also coming up with the burnout. Diving into that, I felt like that was a very important message that you share with us. So thank you once again for being here with us today.
Thank you so much, Anais. It was amazing.
If you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and share it with anyone you believe would benefit from hearing it. Because as you know, life is too short to feel unfulfilled at work.